Hi everyone, welcome to today's panel, which is entitled Cybercrime in a Post-Pandemic World. We'll be getting started shortly. Today's moderator is technology writer and editor Tom Reed. He's going to lead the panel and introduce you to everybody else on the panel. So before we get started, just a couple of reminders. You've heard this before if you've been to any of the other sessions. Use the poll function on the right of your viewing pane to ask any questions, which we'll pick up at the end. If you haven't already, you can click the theatre mode button, which is under the viewing panel, to watch the full screen, which would probably be best with so many speakers today. Right, so without any further ado, I'll pass over to Tom.
Thank you very much, Carrie. Good morning. With more people than ever before working remotely, organizations have experienced a massive increase in the attack surface of their IT networks and the opening up of a range of technical and human vulnerabilities. But how is the threat landscape changing precisely, and how are organizations and their staff responding? As Carrie said, I'm Tom Reeve. I'm a tech writer and editor with extensive experience in physical and cybersecurity, and I'll be the moderator for the panel discussion today on cybercrime in a post-pandemic world. Before we start, just a quick housekeeping note. We'll be finishing at 12 o'clock. That gives us about 30 minutes for our discussion and 10 minutes at the end for questions from the audience. So start thinking about those questions now and pop them into the Q&A box at any time during the session. We also have a question for the audience. Just click on the polls tab on your screen and you'll see the question. I'll give everyone a few minutes to answer that while we kick off our panel discussion. So joining us for this panel, I'm delighted to say, are three cybersecurity experts who will hopefully shed some light on today's topic and answer a few of our questions. They are Mahbubul Islam, the director of the Securtiy Institute and a practicing CISO. Hi, Mahbubul.
Morning.
We also have Nicola Whiting, MBE, Chief Strategy Officer at Titania. Good morning, Nicola.
Morning.
And we have David M., Principal Security Researcher at Kaspersky. Welcome to the panel, and thanks for joining us. So, I thought we'd just jump straight into the first question. As we know, as I said, more people are working from home than ever before. So I wanted to ask, how has the pandemic changed the way cyber criminals are operating? Mahbubul, have you seen a big increase in remote working? And if so, how has that affected your organization?
So to answer your first part of the question, yes, there has been a significant amount of people working from home. That's the way we have to operate our businesses now during this tough period. The technology that we forget, the technologies has also improved. I think in the last 5 to 10 years, if technology was the same from then, I think it might have been a difficult challenge for us to work from home and work away from our offices in itself. People have got more used to being remote. The challenges have become different. As a security practitioner, the responsibility of managing people's security has gone beyond normal scope of my offices and our premises elsewhere into people's homes. And that's people's private accommodation and other things similar to that. So it can become a difficult thing, whereas other people, normally you're in control of your domain, you're able to secure everything. When you move away from that, that becomes a challenge. The whole thing around bring your own device has also increased within organizations, and especially ours. And where we provide IT, getting IT to people have been a challenge as well. So wherever somebody is, you have to get the IT to them, and it's got to be secure. We also forget there's a lot of people behind supporting these services. So where you've got suppliers, you've got vendors, they provide a service to you. So for example, building a new IT kit and stuff like that. So that can be quite a challenge. In terms of risks and threats from cyber criminals, I don't think that's changed any more than it has been in the past. It's always going to increase in terms of attacks and types of attacks. Phishing emails have increased as well, quite significantly. But ultimately, you get to a situation where people will always get attacked, and organizations will always be attacked, and we have to be ready to respond to those type of attacks in managing those things.
Yeah, thanks, Mahbubul. And Nicola, I mean, how do you think that cyber criminals have adapted to the pandemic?
So there's an old Chinese curse that says, "May you live in interesting times." And these times are pretty interesting, both for the defenders and the attackers. So I'd say there's a couple of factors in here. First of all, yeah, our attack surface is different. It now extends into people's homes, as was said. And it isn't just about the technology, it's about the people too. And whereas when people are in an office, they have a certain mindset, they're in their workplace, they're less likely to click on things. That's really different when it's a Friday night and you've got to pick up the kids from school and it's suddenly your home and the dog walks in and you think you've just got something from HR, and we're now pre-programmed to click on stuff from people. We're actually even more than normal because we're getting emails from HR saying, this is what furlough is going to look like, or this is what the new thing is, and what about your mental health and well-being? And we're also wanting to click on things that are potentially from family and friends. If you've got something from your friend or family saying, I've got COVID, it's really serious, well, the likelihood you're going to click on it is higher now. So there's a different attack surface. It's much harder to control in some ways, and a different mindset from the people. And that is almost a perfect storm for the rise of cybercrime. And that's what we're seeing. If you look at the target areas, of course they're choosing COVID. Why wouldn't you? If you're a criminal, you're going to go where the money is and the likelihood is, and that's where the likelihood is. It's in the COVID stuff. So yeah, I think we're going to see more of that because, like any harvester, they're going to go, yeah, all the apples are right. We're going to go pick as many as we can. And so we've just got to be aware of that.
Terrific. Thanks, Nicola. And David, I mean, at Kaspersky, I mean, how do you see the threat landscape changing?
Well, we've certainly seen a spike in numbers, probably about 25% more in terms of malicious programs since that first lockdown in March time. So the numbers certainly have gone up. And I mean, in line with what's already been said, that's pretty understandable. What we've got in terms of COVID-19 is a topic that is persistent in a way that other topics used as a hook by the phishers isn't. The World Cup or Black Friday or Valentine's Day, they're sort of here today, gone tomorrow. In the case of COVID-19, A, who isn't interested in it? And B, it goes on and on and on, and all the different aspects of it, whether it's government furlough schemes or tax incentives or delivery notices, all of that. So, what Nicola says is quite right, that in a sense, nothing's changed because these people are still trying to exploit human fallibility, but they also know that we're more vulnerable at home. And so it's no coincidence that the number of attempts, for example, to brute force remote desktop protocol credentials have gone up. And we've seen spikes of that over the last 8 or 9 months. So they're well aware of the work from home situation and obviously keen to exploit every aspect of that they can. But it is definitely, in terms of their MO, not much has changed there, which is pitch something at somebody, try to persuade them to do something which is going to jeopardize the security of them and their organization.
Indeed. Okay. Well, thanks for that. Yeah, Nicola.
I just want to say I loved advanced persistent topic. I'm never going to use APT as threat again.
Excellent. So we'll jump over to the poll question. People have had audience has had a chance to vote on it. I asked, with more people working from home, do you think that employees have become better or worse at managing their own cybersecurity? And our audience seems to be pretty well polarized on that. I gave people the option of saying it remained about the same, but we've got 50%, sorry, that's just changed. 46% said it's become better. 46% has said it's gotten worse. And 13% around about the same. I don't think that quite adds up to 100, but never mind. I mean, in light of this, I mean, obviously it is proving to be a challenge for some people. But I suppose the key question is, what can we learn from this experience? You know, what sort of lessons can we take away from this? Nicola?
So one of the lessons is, particularly if you think about SME land, which is the majority of employers in pretty much every country, those SMEs, the minnows, make the mighty whale of our economy. And the reality is, if you're choosing between certain death in terms of ability to make money and risk, you're going to choose that you need to be operational. So if you were choosing like, you know, if we put all of our people working from home, we're going to maintain operational ability, but there's going to be a massive amount of risk because we've got no way of protecting our networks, because the only way for us is to open everything up. I'm using extreme examples here. But the reality is every single business is going to choose that, because nobody would choose certain going out of business. So the challenge for us as professionals in the industry is to persuade people to go and revisit that now. So that if they've had to make that choice of continuing over safety for their clients in terms of data protection and things like that, that they need to go and revisit that, because now they've maintained operational resilience. Now they need to go back and look at the resilience of their data and the security and everything else. So I think that's what we've learned. What we've learned is when you put people in crisis, they choose to survive, even if that means risk down the line. So that it's kind of obvious but interesting because of what's happened in the wider world and how that increases everybody's risk profile because of third-party access.
Right, and I mean, David, I mean, what would you say that we've gotten wrong along the way?
Well, I'm not sure about wrong. I think, you know, if we look at who our target audience are, if you like. I mean, on the one hand, we've got larger businesses who, in terms of the things that they need to do to support remote workers, it's not new in that sense. The logistical issue of having so many more to support is one thing, but actually the mechanics of how do we do this are not that different. On the other hand, as Nicola's just pointed out, we've got a lot more small and medium-sized businesses. And for one thing, their priority is whatever job they're doing, not security. And they don't necessarily have security people in-house. And I think one of the potential dangers, I think, when as professionals we discuss this, is we get involved in some very technical stuff without realizing that actually for many of the people we want to help, their understanding isn't that great. And actually there's a danger, I think, that they just kind of get lost in all of this wave of stuff coming at them and think this is too hard and I can't manage it. And yet actually, if we bring it down to some of the basic stuff, then they can raise the bar in terms of security significantly higher than what it is. So, you know, using the analogy of domestic security, I'm not going to keep out some determined attacker. But actually, if I have deadbolts on the door, window locks, and a burglar alarm, then I'm going to make it significantly harder. And the opportunist criminal is going to be deterred. And so some of that basic stuff is really important. And you know, I think we need to not put people off by making them think that this is too hard. And part of that actually, and a part that is not so easy to deal with, is how do we patch human resources, because the digital ones we know are hard enough to patch, but when it comes to patching humans, it's a different ball game. And you know, that is undoubtedly one of the key things that we need to do, because if you look at attacks right across the board, whether that's advanced persistent threats, targeted attacks, including nation state attacks, or whether that's opportunist cybercrime. The starting point is so often tricking somebody into doing something that jeopardizes security. So we need to find imaginative ways to actually secure people.
Indeed. Thanks, David. Mahbubul, this point about opportunism, are you seeing a lot of that within your organization and amongst, our members of the Security Institute, talking about this?
So I think I'd agree with everything that's been said, and I think there's a bit more to add in the sense that when we mentioned and when Nicola mentioned that people are coming together in a point of crisis, people work together better, and then there's a lot of SMEs that can't get access to information that they need, or in terms of guidance on how do they work from home, how do they do activities, whatever the activities is, campaigns against phishing, whatever. Professional security professionals across industries have come together to make sure we are able to provide guidance through whichever vehicle we can. So for our perspective, we've got our organization that has got a membership of security professionals, and we're using that to get messages out. I'm sure other colleagues that are in different organizations are doing the same, and it doesn't have to be professional bodies. It could be generic organizations that are actually sending messages out, which is positive. Ultimately, the challenge is always going to be educating our colleagues in who are working and the do's and don'ts of doing good security and bad security, or avoiding bad security. Educating people can take time, and lots of things has to be it has to be more focused on themselves. So as an example, Barclays have done several amount of campaigns on TV, and others have as well, and it means that you protect your username and password, you don't share your credentials and stuff like that. In your working environment, it's the same, but it doesn't hit home because you're so used to doing certain things. As David mentioned, people click on links and stuff like that, and it can cause other issues in that space. So from a membership perspective, we've had a lot more engagement. We've been able to help, but at the same time, we've also been able to bring people together, as opposed to trying to provide all the answers ourselves. Because when you got a membership of 3,500 or more, there's a lot of experts in there, a lot of people that are engaged, and it's not just one organization. We're working across multiple organizations.
Interesting. I think Nicola wanted to jump in there with a question or comment.
For the audience, if they want something, my 60-second ad version of what to say to people. I think the key thing is to remember to give advice at a level that is suitable for the person that you're advising. So, let's say you had a top cyclist, you would maybe talk about, the carbon fiber frames and all the expensive stuff. If you had somebody that just wanted to go around the shops, you'd talk about the appropriate one with a shopping basket on the front. And the great thing is, in the UK, we've got those things. So we have experts at Crest and in other organizations that can deal with the large companies and really get into the nitty-gritty and stuff. And we've also got stuff that NCSC and a wide range of industry people have contributed to in the format of things like Cyber Essentials. So I'm not saying instantly Cyber Essentials is a bike with a shopping basket on, but from the point of view that, it's got things on, like turn off auto run, or, adjust this setting here. And in terms of continual improvement, which I think David mentioned, just getting a little bit better, that every single thing they do, it doesn't have to be, unless you've finished everything on this list, you're rubbish. Just do one thing at a time, one thing a month. In 12 months, you'll be more secure than you were 12 months ago. And Cyber Essentials is a great place to start, because it's got specific advice. So if you know SMEs, just tell them to get along and do some of that maybe.
Right. Okay. So a pitch there for Cyber Essentials.
Well, yes, I don't really care what standard it is. There's lots of them. There's NIST and everything else, but just do something.
Right, right. So, but address for everybody out there, it's address the basics. I think that's probably most important for the SMEs out there who don't have the dedicated resource. I mean, what should they be doing in this situation if they don't have that dedicated resource, you know, to look after their cybersecurity? David.
Well, I think one of the dangers, if you're a small business, is that you survived, and if nothing bad has happened to you and your business is going, there's a danger that you kind of think, well, you know, we're all set, everything's okay. But I think it's going back to something Nicola said early on, which is, you know, I guess our job in the industry is to try to persuade people to revisit it and say, well, okay, yeah, you survived and that's great. So tick for the business continuity. But actually now let's look at some of the other things you can do to ensure that your business continues to run normally. And I think that's the key thing is to say, well, actually, what sort of things do we need to look at? And it's about looking at what they can manage. And not sort of swamping them in a big sea of kind of technical information, but actually meeting them where they are and giving them advice that's actionable for them.
Mm. So, I mean, we're learning a lot of lessons, I suppose, from the pandemic. A lot of people have been pushed into working remotely very quickly. A lot of corporate plans have been accelerated greatly as a result. But I mean, should we have been better prepared for this? You know, should we have seen this, you know, this thing coming? I'm sure there were some future forecasters out there who probably saw it coming. But I mean, generally as a society, should we have seen this coming? I mean, what do you think, Mahbubul?
From it's always there's always threat of pandemics in most risk registers across most organizations, and unfortunately it's one of those ones where you base it on previous situations and previous incidents of this nature. We've not had something in around the world for a very, very long time, you know. So for us to be able to say, you know, we could have seen the future, to say we could have had things in place, that's kind of difficult. However, as I said earlier, technology has improved so much that the mindset has moved in trying to deal with how people can adapt in those situations to continue running their organization, businesses, families, other things, and that's changed. And it's mainly based on the fact that we as humans have also accepted that we can change the way we do things. We in the past, we never, you know, it wasn't a norm to work from home. And there's a chap that was on the BBC where his wife came in with his well, his child came into the room, and it was all over the news, and there's wow, it's been interrupted. But now that is a norm. If that happens now, nobody would battle an eye. I don't think it would make their news now. Like, you know, that's the thing. So mindset of people has changed, and people have become more accommodating and understanding. And I'm hoping that going forward, we'll be a bit more mindful of that kind of behavior as well, in terms of working from home and stuff like that.
Do we? I mean, what do you think, David? I mean, do you think that, you know, we're going to see a long-term change in working patterns now? I mean, you know, are you seeing that out there?
There'll be a change. I'm not sure I buy into the idea that post-pandemic everybody's going to be working from home. I think what this has shown us is that it's possible to do it. So it's going to be an element of the work environment, whereas maybe a year ago, had you suggested wholesale to companies that, you know what, push your people at home, have them work from home, you've got a lot of pushback. I think now, I'm not saying that they will do it, I'm just saying that people will be more comfortable, businesses will be more comfortable with that as an element of the workplace. So it definitely, work from home will figure more post-pandemic, but there are other aspects to this as well. You know, the psychological aspect of being locked in a shell where you only get to see people in 2 dimensions on a screen if you're on a Zoom call, for example, as opposed to, you know, being able to be part of a physical community, which you are when you go to the office.
Indeed, and I think we're all missing that sort of networking and the sort of the accidental meetings and chats that you have with colleagues. But I mean, what do you think, Nicola? I mean, are we in danger of a lot of times in cybersecurity, sort of that old adage, the generals are always fighting the last battle or refighting the last battle? You know, are we in danger of that, you know, sometimes with our thinking?
So, you know, I'm a big, strong proponent of neurodiversity, not least because I'm autistic, but I think there's a couple of points that I'd pick up on from that. One, in terms of working from home, it's not just about the security, although that is a factor, because one of the things that mean that people can recognize if something's a bit fishy, you know, on an email, is because they have enough social interaction with that person to recognize that this isn't their normal way of speaking, or their typical way of speaking, or there's something off about this, or they've said that they're out of the office, but I know that they're on holiday this week. You know, all of those things will often come from social interaction. Secondly, I think that there is a danger that finance will drive this move to working from home rather than, is this the right thing for the people? Because a lot of businesses are recognizing, well, just like when we did open plan offices, we can put more people in the same space, that's less cost for the company, and we'll work around all that's going to be better psychologically. And it turned out that it wasn't. And actually we're now building little pods for people to sit in, because some people need quiet to be their most effective and most efficient. And so, you know, we've got that challenge of, we need to take some breathing time. We need to actually look at this and go, this is where we are now because of a pandemic. What does it actually need to be like moving forward in the future to maximize everything, to maximize people's flexibility, but also to maximize the interaction that some people need, and kind of get this blended approach, because I think that's what we need. And that includes security and the people and everything else.
Terrific. I see we're getting near the end of our time. The time has really flown, but I just wanted to remind people that there's still time to submit questions to the Q&A. I see we've got a few in there now, but if you've got any questions, please do put those in there and we'll have a look. We'll try to get to those at the end. So I think it would be nice, you know, to give our audience, you know, some key sort of takeaways from this. So what would be your top 3 or 2 cybersecurity areas of focus right now? And, you know, would that be for, you know, small businesses, large businesses, both? I guess maybe go to David. Go to David first.
Well, I'm not sure I can give you a top 3, but I think a message really for smaller businesses, and it is that security isn't some esoteric black art. It's a manageable thing that you can do. And I know Nicola has given a plug for Cyber Essentials. There may be companies out there that think, oh, you know, we don't want some full-scale certification. It doesn't matter. If you use it as a checklist, that's a start. What things are on here and how do they relate to my business and what can we do? And I think in particular, you know, don't overlook the people side of this, because there's a danger, especially since technologists are the ones who are putting out the guidance, of thinking of this as a technology solution. It is, there's technology there that can help for sure, but actually the people side of this is huge.
Yeah, I think that's very interesting, the people side of things, and how we can, you know, sort of train up all the army of work from home people to look after their own security. Mahbubul, I mean, what would be your sort of key takeaways? Maybe, you know, what would you say to businesses out there? Oh, sorry, Mahbubul, can you hear me?
Yes, sorry, apologies.
Oh, right.
I was on mute. Apologies.
Okay, sorry.
So, takeaway, I think I do agree with Cyber Essentials. I think it's one of those things where it gives you a point of a framework or a point of position to work from. That is geared towards small, medium enterprises and micro businesses. So, we big organizations have funds to manage security and run the business, differently. SMEs and micro businesses are having to decide upon what's the priority to run their organization and survive during this period. So, educating people, there's a lot of stuff that's out there that's free and available. I think people should focus a bit on working on watching videos and webinars and having conversations with security practitioners, coming onto these kind of events. There's also free available products and available out there that's free to use, and is well recommended by security practitioners. And it's always good to go out there and to work out what can work for your organization. So, and most organization, if you're part of a number of professional bodies or one or two bodies, you can ask questions through them and get engagement. So that works and helps as well. And the last thing I would like to say is fact checking.
Mm-hmm.
We in our organization have suffered a number of campaigns against us from a phishing perspective, and I'm talking about Her Majesty's Courts and Tribunal Services. So certain things are sent to people. People need to get a bit more aware of, does that look real? What does a real request look like? And is it part of a normal business for somebody to request payment for something that you would normally never make a payment on? So it's, the understanding that it can be quite tricky, but having been through all of this in the last six months, communication has become a key thing. So communicating with people, understanding the facts of what's going on out there is going to be quite key for me, I think, in this period of time.
Yeah, I think that's a good communication is a great takeaway. And Nicola, what are your takeaways from the pandemic?
Okay, so just looking at the title of this panel, cybercrime in a post-pandemic world, I think if you're a business out there, it's important to realize that security is simpler than you think, just like David said. And it ties into everything as a business that you need to do. So businesses only really have two things. They've got innovation, create new stuff to sell to people, or even continual improvement, better processes to reduce costs and improve how you do stuff. And then you've got resilience that equals profit. So those, innovation and resilience, that's where your profit lies. And that's the job of a business, is typically to make profit. So security needs to be baked into those things, because in innovation terms, finding new stuff that helps you protect things, which ties into resilience, make sure that you protect your bottom line. And like Mahbubul said, there are loads of things that are free out there. There's lots of free advice. There's even free products. And so it doesn't need to be too difficult. And Cyber Essentials, you don't need to pay for the certificate, although that's great and it does give you more access to certain markets. You can just use the guidelines to make yourself more secure. And then I would just like to tie up one of the things that was said in terms of phishing. If you want to give your team a really simple way of improving your chances that they're not likely to be phished, and the thing is, look at what's being said and ask yourself, is this trying to give me an emotional response to something? Is it trying to get me to do something? Is it pushing an emotional button? Because cyber criminals, unlike us, they are really getting into their marketing. We often don't use our marketing departments to craft our messages to our internal teams on how to protect themselves. But the cyber criminals, I swear they're using some of their profit to do neuromarketing courses, because they are getting really good at it. And what they do is they create something that makes you slightly worried, slightly panicky, slightly intrigued, slightly interested. They are pushing your emotional button. So if it's an emotional response, that is a big red flag to take a pause, to maybe disconnect from that email, to contact the provider that's sending it you, give them a call, if it's your bank or your lawyer or whatever they're trying to impersonate, and do it that way.
Terrific. Thanks, Nicola. So, well, we are we've got a few minutes left here in our session. Just like to say, thanks for answering all my questions. And now we have a number of questions flooding into the Q&A section here. So I'll just pose a question, and if one of you want to tackle it, just raise your hand, and I'll call on you. So, first question: do you think most businesses are ready for longer-term hybrid working, or or are they putting the right security in place? So, are most businesses ready for this long-term hybrid working? And I don't know. I'll throw that one to Nicola.
Ready?
I'll pick on you.
Probably not. Are they going to do it? Certainly they are, because that's the way the market's moving. I mean, if I ask a different question, are most businesses ready for security generally, even though they're not hybrid working? When you look at the average pass rate on any pen test, the answer is no. Every business carries a certain element of risk just in doing business. The trick is to reduce that risk as much as possible. So they're not ready today. They will be more ready as they go along.
Right. Okay. Somebody's asking, how can you deal with a cybercrime incident attack when it comes from another country where their cybercrime government units don't have the resources or don't consider these attacks as important? I'll just, I don't know, what do you think? Mahbubul?
Hi, so it would be wrong of me not to plug the NCSC here as a civil servant. I think if you're in the UK and you've get attacks or incidents relating to your organisation from another country or another organisation, there are helpline and guidance on the NCSC website on what to do and how to get involved. It's important that we all start trying to use those kind of vehicles and mechanisms. NCSC is UK wide, and obviously you can access the site from anywhere else in the world. But there's also local jurisdictions and processes in play, like for example in Scotland and other parts of England and Wales. So my view would be go straight to NCSC site, and then from there you will get the support and guidance, and you can start from there. And if you have a security team, then they will also help facilitate that as well. If you don't, NCSC will step in. They've got Industry 100, where they cover lots of parts of industries, and they have plugs into different people with experts in that field to then be able to support and help as well. So it can be a good positive thing by engaging with our front door in NCSC.
Terrific, thanks. David, did you want to come in on that question?
It was really just to sort of mirror the question back in a sense, which is to say that law enforcement agencies globally are typically bound by geopolitical restrictions. They operate within a particular area, within a particular political jurisdiction as well. Cyber criminals, by contrast, don't. So a cyber criminal sitting somewhere at the other side of the world can just as easily impact you as they can somebody in their local geographical region. And that is one of the sort of inherent things in the way the internet crime works, of course. So that gives them plenty of scope for hiding between the cracks. And it's one of the reasons why, cooperation, I think, is very important, whether that's at the level of Interpol or Europol or others. But it also, I guess throws the emphasis back on us, which is to say, having recognized that the threat can be global, we need to do whatever steps are necessary to try and make it more difficult for attackers wherever they are, and not necessarily rely on the fact that, we're going to be able to deal with that at a police level, if you will.
Okay. We've had a couple of questions here about phishing, so I'll kind of roll them into one question. I constantly get emails from colleagues relating to genuine emails. My hard and fast rule is to look at where it has come from, and if it looks obscure, then delete. Do you have a hard or fast rule that I can adapt? And the other question that related to that is, how do you gauge the education needs of staff when there's a very wide variation in technical ability, experience, familiarity, and so forth? And I don't know. I'll throw that one to Mahbubul. Oh, okay. Yeah, I'll throw that one to Mahbubul, if you will. How do you do with that at the Courts and Tribunal Service?
So we have multiple levels of users. One of the things is tailoring education pieces. I think Nicola's already kind of covered that one earlier. Target the audience to make sure that you've got the messages out correctly and appropriately. In terms of metrics, unfortunately, the only way you know you are being successful is the number of incidents being reported versus a number of incidents being dealt with as well. So, if you're seeing nothing being reported in your organization, you shouldn't just think everything's fine. It could be that people are not aware of how to do it and the process isn't there. So you may need to focus on a bit on that. There are organizations, from David's area as well, where they do provide a level of education within the products. So if you do get a phishing email or something like that, they can pick it up, or there's other companies that do that as well. So it's important to understand that, but knowing how much is enough is based on where you want to get to. You will never stop everything. It's all about making sure that you are on top of things in terms of awareness of what needs to happen, how it needs to happen, and where we're trying to get to.
Nicola.
So there are, depending upon the budget of the organization, there are numerous places that will do you a phishing test. So rather than guesstimate how likely is it that my team globally across my organization are going to click on things, the best thing is to conduct a phishing test, just like you do a fire alarm test. I mean, realistically, every business I know will do their regulatory fire alarm tests every year, but very few businesses do regular phishing tests in the wider organizations out there. And the risk is far higher to the business that is a route to damage your income. So, if you've got the budget, do a phishing test, find out where you actually are. It might be a bit scary, but the only way is up. And then you can plan, because you'll know which parts of your organization are more at risk, because you'll have some facts to base it on. So do that and then move forward, because typically the people that do phishing tests also have some good advice as to some steps forward, because that's their job.
Indeed. And given that some huge percentage, like 90% or something like that, of attacks on organizations, successful attacks, come in through email, it's a good investment for companies to be making. And the final question, I think we just have time for this, is do you have any favorite resources? We've been talking about resources. Any favorite resources, videos, websites that people can go and have a look at, that's user friendly and caters to a variety of skills? What sort of what videos have you got, Nicola?
So Dr. Jessica Barker did some phishing videos, actually, some little free phishing videos. She did those with some other folks they were aimed at the NHS people, because they wanted to help protect their risks, but they're about emotion and stuff like that, and they're freely distributable. So if any SMEs are watching, just put in Sygenta phishing and that should come up. And the other thing is NCSC's Twitter feed. I know that sounds like a really bizarre place to send somebody, but whenever there's like a hot trending thing or stuff you need to be aware of, things tend to pop up on their Twitter, and inevitably they're interesting and useful. So, and obviously the NCSC website, because that has all been generally tested to death, and it's all sensible stuff.
Right. Yes. Okay. Twitter feed. I think they've got an email newsletter as well. If you're a bit old-fashioned and prefer things to come in on the email.
Oh, that's the first time I felt happening then.
Yeah. I like email. What can I say? Terrific. Any suggestions from David or Mahbubul?
I just to Cyber Essentials, which we've mentioned already in the NCSC, I would add Get Safe Online as well as a good resource.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, terrific. Well, I think we're out of time. I can see that we need to wrap up. So I'd just like to thank our panelists once again for sharing their expertise with us. I thought it was a very good session. And I'd like to thank the audience for joining us this morning. I hope you found this useful. And finally, thanks to ProBrand for organizing this event. So that's goodbye from us. Stick around. I think there's a lot more sessions to come during the rest of the day. The agenda looks really interesting.
Thank you, John.
Hey, thanks very much. I thought that session was absolutely amazing. I learned so much. There were so many good little snippets of information and guidance. So yeah, I just want to again thank everybody on the panel. Thank Tom for expertly leading everything. And so just to confirm, right now it's time for our lunch break. So have a little break, but please take the time to visit some of our vendors on their showcases and booths. We couldn't run this without them. And they've also will answer lots of your questions. I saw there were lots of questions that we didn't get round to, but maybe put some of those to some of the guys and put them on the spot in the booths. The next live session is going to start at 12:45. So hopefully we'll see you there. Thanks again. Bye.
Well, Kerry, is this going to be recorded so that we could maybe